Okay, greetings everybody. I'm Marguerite Rigoglioso of Seven Sisters Mystery School, and today I am here with my dear friend and colleague and elder, Amejo Amyot, and we are here in Saratoga Springs where she's currently living. You can also see behind us her sculpture, one of her very large sculptures of a Zoftig woman with spirals at her belly and at her breast, and you can't really see it here, but it's painted with spirals all around. Amejo is an amazing artist. She's a sculptor, a painter. What other kinds of art do you do?
I make books.
She makes books.
With Coptic stitch.
Coptic stitch, yeah. So welcome,
Thank
Amejo.
you. Thank you.
So I've known Amejo, I don't know, 30 years or something like that, since we were both members of the International Women's Writing Guild back in the Northeast, which yearly had a summer workshop at Skidmore College with lots of different, a summer conference with lots of different workshops on writing for women at all different stages of writing and ability levels and so forth. And I taught there for 2 years. You also taught.
Mm-hmm.
What kinds of things did you teach?
I taught the morning meditation.
Mm-hmm.
So there was always a very strong women's spiritual component to this group.
Mm-hmm.
So it attracted that kind of women, and also did a variety of classes besides writing that would foster a woman's spirituality.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the best part. It wasn't just an academic kind of writing situation. It was really an immersion into women's issues and women's values and things like that. It was wonderful.
Absolutely. I remember teaching about the goddess and writing at that time. So Amejo has a wide background and a diverse and deep background into many of the healing arts, and she's also a wise elder. And so what I thought I would start with is asking you about your Seneca ancestry. Let's have you just start right off with that. Yeah.
So back in the early 80s, I was looking for any kind of teachings around spirituality, and it was hard to find. But Susan Weed, who is an herbalist, was hosting Grandmother Twila Niche, who was a Seneca elder, and it was a weekend workshop that I couldn't attend because of something else. But I was really drawn to her, so I started to go. In the car, I was born between the Allegheny and Seneca, or Allegheny and Cattaraugus reservations, and my great-grandmother was a Seneca, although she lived off reservation at the time, and her children didn't want to talk about being Seneca because it was not okay to be Seneca back then.
Was it your mother or your father?
My mother's side.
Okay. Wow. So that's just such a sad loss, isn't it?
It was sad. So when I started studying with Grandmother Twila, here I moved out of that area because it was like Appalachia. You know, there was no industry and no money and no anything. Went to college in Albany and then stayed out here. So as I'm going to study with Grandmother Twila, I'm like driving back along the thruway into my roots, into my heritage. And I thought, this is just, I couldn't wait to get out of there when I was 18. And now I'm coming back. You know, I was coming back home. And Grandmother Twila didn't start teaching till she was, late 60s, 70 years old. And she had the facial features and gestures of my maternal lineage. So it often felt like she was my grandmother, biological grandmother, teaching. And we didn't really explore that lineage, but because they both came from the Allegheny Reservation, there was probably some blood connection to Grandmother Twila. But it was fun because she was my spiritual grandmother, but she also looked like my biological grandmother.
Right, and she had grown up on the reservation, you're saying, and but at 5 years old had been brought to the schools that
Yeah, she was taken off the reservation,
Yeah.
went to live with a family in Buffalo. She talked very highly of them. She said they were a wonderful family, but they were white, and that we were saying to her, give us the word for the Seneca word for moon, or the Seneca word for arrow, or the Seneca, and she had no language. They, at that time, early 80s, hadn't retrieved or saved any Seneca language. Within 10 years, they started to put that language together before the old people died. So they now have a Seneca language and a dictionary and things like that. But when I was studying with her, we wanted to say the words,
Yeah.
the native words for things, but
Yeah, your heritage.
it wasn't available.
And the Seneca were matriarchal, and they were part of the Six Nation, what became the Six Nation Haudenosaunee or Iroquois Confederacy, brought together by the Peacemaker and Hiawatha and Jigonsase hundreds of years ago. So if you could distill down one or two major teachings or points that Grandma Twyla imparted to you, what would that be?
Well, she was really a matriarchal, matrifocal lineage, and so she brought to us the teachings of the grandmothers. So more than anything else, she wanted to keep that tradition alive. She wanted to keep all the traditions alive, but she particularly brought to the women, of course, were the ones that went to her teachings, and so she provided us with a lot of grandmothers. So in the summer, we always had a women's gathering for about a week, and she brought grandmothers from different areas of mostly the East, with different teachings, so that we would have that experience.
Did she have any signature teaching that you really drew to yourself and felt, oh, I want to live that, or I want to pass that on?
She was very intuitive and a very intuitive teacher, and when it was my private time for teaching with her, she'd go, "Come on, let's go outside." So we'd go outside and we'd start walking, and a red leaf would fall, and she said, "Oh, I should be teaching you about red today. Sit down by this tree. This is where the teaching will be." So she would start with, whatever crossed her path was the teaching of the moment.
Oh my.
One of the things she was really good at that she inherited from her dad or learned from her dad was reading stones. So we would always bring her a stone when we would come to visit, and then she would read into that, our particular message from the stone.
Literally look at the stone and say, oh, this pattern is representing...
Well, she'd say, well, let's count the sides. How many sides does this stone have? And then that number would be a sacred number.
Oh.
And she'd say, this has 5 sides, so let's talk about 5 and the significance of 5. And then if you look at it this way, it looks like there's some writing on it. So she would say, well, all right, let me see what it's trying to tell you from the writing. And so she would go into an altered space and just start being an oracle for the stone.
Wow.
It was an amazing kind of thing. So
Oh.
she'd start with some concrete things she learned about reading stones, but then would go into an altered space and teach from there.
Very intuitive. So it's Grandma Twyla, what was her last name?
Niche.
Niche, N-I-C-H-E?
N-I-T-
We have a dog here, by the way.
T-S-C-H, I think. Niche.
N-I-T-S-C-H. No,
No.
buddy, there's a puppy.
Yes.
So he wants to be on the film as well, of course.
Of course, he wants to be the star.
So I want us to also then leapfrog to your most recent work with Don Oscar. Can you explain who Don Oscar is and what you have just been certified to teach?
Okay. Don Oscar is a curandera, a healer from Peru, and he was taught in a lineage with his teacher named Don Celso. Palomino, I can't remember the last part. And then later on, he worked with Don Benito, another elder, and that was mostly about learning the significance of putting together despachos. But the early teacher Don
and despachos are these kind of altars that you put and enfold in cloth,
right, right, and then
stone, and
either burn them or bury them or let them float away, and that's how the blessing. So like you could do it for a special intention. So like your aunt just died, for instance, and so you would want maybe to communicate how much you loved her in this, and also to send the spirits on their way. So it would be a real focused intention of why you were creating this beautiful despacho.
with stones, leaves, feathers, found objects of nature.
Right. All that kind of thing. Candy, because spirits like candy.
Spirits like candy. Something
The
good to remember.
the uterus of a yama.
The uterus of a yama.
Yeah.
Whoa.
So there are a lot of like sacred kind of things. Animal crackers. So the animal crackers are for like the animal kingdom, and
I love
stars. They always like stars, to have stars, kind of in there. But the women of our lineage who are making them now use a lot of flowers, and they're just incredibly beautiful.
And
mandalas.
you enfold it into
You fold it all
cloth.
in first with paper, and then you put. Traditionally, you would put, a sacred altar cloth on it, and bundle it in there and carry it in there. But when you're going to take it to the fire, then you take the cloth, unwrap it, take the cloth out, and just leave it in the paper. It's like tissue paper, so that it burns.
So tell us more about your work with Don Oscar then.
So I started studying with him about 5 years ago. So I've been studying with shamans since Grandmother Twila, since the 80s, and so he's been my latest teacher. And
So we've gone from your earliest teacher to your most recent
my
teacher.
most recent teacher, and what he brings is the Peruvian lineage, mostly of healing and doing ritual and ceremony for healing. So he's a tremendous healer. He's also a tremendous teacher. He left Peru, went to college and graduate school in the United States in transpersonal psychology. So
At the Institute of Transpersonal Psychology?
no,
Okay.
I can't remember whether Duke or Temple or one of
goodness.
those traditional universities in the South.
Wow.
And I don't remember, but he studied with a very, very famous transpersonal psychologist who was there, and I think that's why he went there. But unlike other Peruvian shamans, he speaks very good English, but he learned how to run workshops and to teach. So he can teach in English. He knows how to structure a workshop. I've worked with many Peruvian shamans, but they don't speak English, and they sometimes aren't the best teachers because they don't know how to teach. They haven't learned how to teach. They're being asked to teach, and they will do a lot of ceremony, a lot of blessings. But with the translation problems, it was hard. It would be hard to get to the depth,
The content.
of their healing traditions that they're passing on. So Don Oscar is like a perfect person to bring that. People in Peru are not particularly interested in learning their old traditions,
Oh gosh.
and so
No man is a prophet in his own country.
Yep. Who is interested but white women?
White women and
From the
white
United States.
middle-aged women, probably.
Yeah.
That's all these workshops I'm going to now. That's who shows up. White people, 50 and above, women.
Right, and the percentage are like 80% women, maybe 20% men will kind of show up in these things. And he has kept his tradition alive and is able to teach it in a way that he can pass it on. So today at 1 o'clock, I got sanctioned as a teacher in his lineage. So I've been studying with him, 5 or 6 years, and went through a 5-part Pachacuti Mesa traditional teaching of healing the self and working towards healing others, which qualified me then to apply to be a sanctioned teacher. Now, there were other things you had to do. I had to do Pacowachu, which is a vision quest, and many other kind of things. So it took me a year after I applied to be sanctioned to finally get sanctioned. So,
And would you say this is from the Q'ero tradition, or the Q'ero of Peru, who were the ones who kind of escaped up to the mountains when the
well, I think
came?
the Q'ero are mostly from the eastern part, like the Cusco area
Okay.
of Peru. So Don Benito would have been a Q'ero teacher. I think that Don Celsos was more from the western part of Peru,
Okay.
northwestern part, and I don't know if technically he would have been described as part of the Q'ero.
Q'ero.
But that's exactly what happened. Is the traditional people, when the Spanish came, went to the mountains and lived up there under very harsh circumstances, but were able to keep their traditions alive and keep them going to present day.
Mm-hmm.
The transition is that the young Peruvians don't want to learn
Right.
traditional ways, and so when Don Celso was getting ready to transition, he said to Don Oscar, you must take this to Turtle Island, which is what they call
Right.
us, the land of the eagles.
Yeah.
And he said, bring the heart of South America, the Heart Island, to the
Oh.
mind of North America. He said, because they need a lot more heart.
Absolutely.
Because the mind has ruled, the United States, and that in order to be a healer, you really need a very big heart, a very strong heart.
So
Your heart
true.
needs to be open. Can't be in your head about
So
that.
talk to us more about some of the key points or teachings that you received from Don Oscar then. The heart teaching obviously is a big one.
Well, he talks a lot about Aini, which is sacred reciprocity,
Yeah.
and that everything has to be in balance.
And that is in the Q'ero, as
Yeah.
far as I know.
Yeah.
Aini.
Yeah,
Munye.
right. Mune is love,
Mm-hmm.
and so there's a lot of focus on opening the heart and being in your heart space. And he says the longest distance you'll ever travel is from your head to your heart.
I love that. So true.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Can
So
you just
one
feel
of the
that?
things that he really helped me with is, I'm a strong feminist. I have been trying to keep women's traditions alive. For that's sort of my purpose, I think, in life, particularly the healing aspects of women. So when I started to work with Don Oscar, I was really looking for a female teacher, and wasn't able to find one. In fact, my first time with him, I said to him, I really like your teachings. I think they're really good, but I really need a woman teacher right now. Could you recommend somebody? So he recommended a couple people that kind of didn't work out. But I thought, well, this man has the biggest heart of any man that I've ever seen. So maybe I'll just go with that. Maybe I'll go with an open heart to an open heart, and maybe that's the teaching for now. But he's Peruvian, and sometimes when he's in 3D reality, there's that Peruvian macho cultural thing comes through, and I am particularly sensitive to that. So he and I would have many conversations about patriarchy and matriarchy and that whole thing. So what it brought up for me was all of the angst that I'm in because of the duality that I'm always seeing, always dealing with, and it really puts me in my head a lot and gets in the way. So he's helped me a lot with letting go of that duality. But before we can be sanctioned, we have to respond to 5 questions. And without revealing that, within it brought up unfinished business I have about about the patriarchal aspect of Peru and Peruvian shamans, perhaps, and stuff like that. So I said, with good, clear conscience, I can't, like, you know, make a compacto to this until I kind of clear up this duality stuff. So I'm writing down all the things that I'd seen that, I was uncomfortable with. Well, of course, being a good teacher, he turned them all back to me. He said, you answer those questions. So I went into my oracle space that I have been so beautifully prepared for by Marguerite.
The priestess of the Dove Oracle training, yes.
Yes,
Amyot
yes.
did levels
Yes,
1
yes.
and 2, blessed be.
So I, spent a long time getting grounded and centered and went into this space, and Mother Mary appears right away. And she's one of my teachers, one of my guides. So I see her in a traditional way with her arms out, at her side, with the light streaming from her hands, standing on a moon. And she said, so I'm saying, you've got to help me with this duality stuff, because it is a drama I'm in. I'm in 3D reality with it. I'm not in 5D reality with it. And it's burdensome, and I want to let it go. So she goes, I said, but I'm worried that this lineage that I'm moving into is all men. And so she's like standing there, and she said, not to worry. She said, I've got their backs. She said, I have been holding sacred feminine space while the world has gone through this tradition into patriarchal space. So she said, whenever people are in healing space or 5D or up reality, I am the balance. So that you can be assured that when Don Oscar and his teachers were in, healing sacred space, not 3D reality, that they were in perfect harmony, balance, male and female. She said, because I was there holding the space all this time for the women, for the, for the female aspect of healing. So when they were teaching, the women's aspects all came through because she was there. She had their back.
Wow, and this would, of course, be relevant to Christ, her son, and that brings us to the teachings of Sri Kaleshwar, Swami Sri Kaleshwar in India, who gathered a lot of sacred palm leaf manuscript writings and drawings that he found synchronistically throughout the years that date way, way back, and his own memory of being there at the time of these beings being alive on the planet, and that Mary was essentially the greatest avatar to walk the planet. And it is she who is behind the Christ, and she did not make the choice to do the activity of the Christ. That was left to the male energy, but she was there in co-creative holding with him. So it feels very relevant to the whole work of Christianity, as well as what you were talking about here.
Well, when I shared that with Don Oscar, he said that there is always La Reina, the queen,
La Reina,
who is on every altar, so that they have kept her as the leading teacher. That they knew that La Reina was there,
right.
and the central part of keeping the heart opened, and the wonderful nurturing aspect of women as healers. And
right. And so whether you're going to call her Mary or Tonantzin or whatever sacred feminine energy, she's there, and she's connected to that heart and that sacred heart. The sacred heart belongs as much to her as to Jesus in that Catholic tradition with the Sacred Heart. That's really what they are ultimately all about. Wow. So where are you now then? I consider you a wise elder. You call yourself a crone. If there were one or two things that you would have to say to younger women who are coming up or perhaps could benefit from some guidance, what would you say about, and maybe it could be even about, becoming an elder? Well, how do you see becoming an elder, and what is one of the major things that a younger woman might need to know or want to know about becoming an elder?
Well, I think even before that is that women are primarily intuitive, and excuse me for a minute. And their bodies inform that intuition. And as our culture has encouraged women to move into what I call the pantsuit woman, who wants to strive and break the glass ceiling.
Who invented that look? It's horrible. Especially in polyester, when the top matches the bottom. Okay.
So, that I think in order to be a good healer, women need to go back to the womb, to the breast, to the opening into the birth canal as a way of receiving the energies from Mother Earth, so that they can be strongly in their intuition, using those centers, like the holy womb chakra, as the place where all creation is. And so if they come to the teachings with an open womb and think about and honor that space as energy, an energy center, I see the energy from Mother Earth entering through our natural opening, up the birth canal into the womb, and then it naturally moves up into the heart, but the heart is surrounded by the breast, and that's where we can feed, those in need, be of service, kind of from that space. But of course, a lot of that has been taken away. Like they'll talk about energy coming up through the perineum,
right, which is a male thing.
Yeah, so that shift,
a male instruction.
And that men will also, or all of us, we've lost this. We'll talk about the koshko, the belly button area. Well, that's really the center of the womb.
Womb chakra. It's essentially the Nada Bindu point.
Yes.
An inch and a half below the navel, floating.
But again, men don't have the womb to refer to. So what's in that area that comes to mind is the belly button. Well, of course, the umbilicus is connected to the mother,
right,
to the womb. So
right,
so the direct place of that is in the womb. So with these young girls coming up, suppose I did a chakra meditation and I had Mother Earth energy coming up and coming through that beautiful opening of the birth canal, as that then brings the energy into the holy womb chakra where all life is created. Think of how women would begin to value their bodies again and those parts of the body.
right,
Instead of having to dismiss them like the perineum, which is like sort of what?
right,
Or the belly button.
right.
So, part of my things that I'm leaving, I think, my lineage is
That's our little timer.
is for women to reclaim their body and the power centers in the body,
Yeah.
and the miraculous function of those places in the body, and what energies that can bring to a woman as she then becomes a healer.
Wow, that's so beautiful. Well, that sounds like a beautiful place to conclude.
Yeah.
If people want to study with you in your role as an officiated teacher of Don Oscar, or if they would like to consult you in any way, how can they do that?
I have a website, and it's Amejo Amyot.
So that's AMEJO, and then Amyot is AMYOT,
Amyot.com.
And you can find her there. Thank you so much.
Okay,
I
thank
really
you.
appreciate our time
Fun
together.
to be out in the garden.
Yes, this beautiful
with
garden.
The spiral dancer back there.
Yeah, oh, she's amazing. All right, thank you, everybody. I'm Marguerite Rigoglioso from Seven Sisters Mystery School. Bye now.